You know, I've noticed in the face of a little baby, there's always a question mark. Have you noticed? If you look closely, you'll see it. And the question mark asks, who am I? You are what you feel about yourself, what you feel about others, and how you relate to the world at large. Really, that's the summation of all of life.
Hello again, everybody. This is Heartbeat, the podcast, featuring insights and teaching from the more than 50 years of work put together by Landon Saunders. On today's episode, Landon begins to explore an answer to that question, who am I? With a response to the first part of that equation, how do you feel about yourself? Welcome in. Once again, here's Landon Saunders.
Do you ever feel like a frog? A frog feels low, slow, drooped, and pooped. Once upon a time there was a frog, but he wasn't really a frog. He was a handsome prince in frog form. And he was floating down the river on a lily pad one day, sunning himself. And all he really needed was the kiss of a beautiful young maiden. That's what it would take to transform him into the handsome prince that he really was. But since when do pretty girls kiss frogs? Well, miracles happen, because one day a beautiful princess came down that same river, and she saw that little frog on the lily pad, and she reached over and grabbed him, and crash, boom, zap, the little frog became a handsome prince, and they were married and lived happily ever after. Now, isn't that a nice story? What we're going to do the next 3 nights is kiss frogs. I believe that in every one of us there is an image that is yet to be, that none of us has perfected who we really are. But if I ever become the person I think that at one time in my life I perhaps dreamed that I might one day be. But I've experienced so much damage. I've failed so many times. There's been so much disappointment that somewhere along the line I began to compromise my dreams. And I settled for something less than one time I thought I was going to be. If we ever somehow bring that self, that person that we really believe we ought to be, if we ever realize that remarkable thing that we've almost made a cliche of, the word potential or capacity, if we ever recognize our real self, if we ever successfully throw off all the masks and all the disguises and the pretension, if we ever learn to quit playing games and to be real, we're going to have to find some dream space. When Saul Bellow accepted the Nobel Prize for Literature, he said one of the hardest things for him to find was some dream space. Now, what is dream space? Dream space is a place where an artist creates his or her work of art. Life is a work of art. We are all being made into something. We're all changing. The contours of our lives are changing, and I'm not just referring to a few bulges here and there, but the contours of our spirits are really changing. You're not the same person you were a year ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. You won't be the same person 20 years from now if you're still living that you are tonight. We're all in this process of change. We're all changing. Now, do you have some dream space where you've considered your life as a work of art and where you are making some decisions about your life? A dream space where you can just think about yourself. Dream space where you can come to a clearer understanding of yourself and where you've been and where you are and where you'd like to be. Dream space. Dream space where a human being is able to get the question mark off his or her face. You know, I've noticed in the face of a little baby there's always a question mark. Have you noticed? If you look closely, you'll see it. And the question mark asks, who am I? You are what you feel about yourself, what you feel about others and how you relate to the world at large. Really, that's the summation of all of life. And it's simplifying simply to move it down and to say, I really have three things that I have to work on. Three things that I have to figure out. I have to figure out who I am. I have to figure out my own identity. I have to come to terms with that. And somehow I can't spend a lifetime simply fretting about relationships, even bad relationships. I must find a way to deal with others that is helpful and that leaves me feeling good about myself and that leaves me moving forward in my life. And then I have to have a way of dealing with the unexpected, with the circumstances that go awry, with the things that happen that so traumatize us, whether it's sickness or disease or a broken home or the loss of a child or the loss of a dear one who's close to us. Whatever it is, we have to have some kind of way to cope during that so that we are not upended and our lives begin to go in reverse instead of progressing. Only three building blocks really are there. Now, there is not any relationship you have, there is not any situation at work, there is not any situation of meaning in your life that couldn't be instantly, tremendously strengthened if you simply like yourself. Just like yourself. Now, don't give me a show of hands, but how many of you here tonight could honestly say, I really do like myself? Would you be embarrassed? Just to say, I like this. How many would be embarrassed to say, not only do I like myself, but I love myself? You say, well, we probably all do. That's a myth. You know, now, I run into some narcissistic people occasionally. But most of the people I run into, they'll say, oh, I love myself, and they'll preen, and they'll do all of this puffery that we sometimes do. But that's a big cover-up. You take all that garb away, and what you have sometimes is a terribly miserable person that's just trying to protect their misery from being seen by all their friends and neighbors and loved ones. That there really are very few individuals who feel really very good about themselves when they are all alone in the dead of night and they can't sleep. That just feel good about themselves. Now, at that point, can you say, yes, I like myself, and yes, I'm feeling good about myself? You see, if I don't feel good about myself, if I am drained, if I have a low estimate, if I am negative, then I take this with me to work. And of course it's not going to work out as well. I take it to bed with me, and that'll be a mess. And I take it to school with me, and that doesn't work. And I try it out on friendships. Why? Because look what you're dealing with. You're dealing with an entity here that represents you, but that isn't an overflowing cup. It isn't an artesian well. There isn't fresh air blowing inside. But you're taking all of that woundedness and all of that hurt. What were you like before you got hurt? You take all of that hurt, you can take the fear, you can take the insecurity, and you carry these things around. Have we ever stopped to think about how heavy that load is? That's a terribly heavy load for a human being to carry around. No wonder our shoulders begin to droop. No wonder we get tired. No wonder we're exhausted so much of the time. No wonder we hardly have the energy to get through the day, and we begin the next morning after a night of sleep that didn't really renew us. No wonder. It's because we just have a lot of garbage down inside us that doesn't have a bit of business in the world being there. Human beings weren't made to live burdened with all of that fear and all of that insecurity and all of that sense of despair, that feeling of powerlessness and helplessness that says, I'm stuck. We weren't made to live like that. And human beings, when finely tuned, know how to deal with all of that. And they become an instrument that you can play on at work. And it won't be perfect, but it'll be more than adequate. And you can play that instrument at home, even in a marriage. And even if the other person is downright ornery, it's amazing what one finely tuned instrument can do in a relationship where the other part is really a whole pile of discords. Just put one beautiful sound in there. Now, if we can just get this good self-image then, if I can feel good about myself. Now, where do you begin with all of that? There's a story told of some men on a ship. And they were out surrounded by the briny sea, and they ran out of water. And so they began to wonder what they were going to do, and the days kept passing, and the burning sun kept blistering their bodies, and their lips were parched and breaking open, dying of thirst. And finally, there was a dot on the horizon, and it was another ship. And as soon as the ship moved closely enough, they began to call out, "Water, water! Bring us some water." And the voices came back, "Let down your buckets where you are." And a little bit later, they thought, well, they don't understand. And so they cried again as the ship came closer and was going to pass out of sight the other way, "Water, water, we're dying of thirst." And the voices came back, "Let down your buckets where you are." And so finally, they let down a bucket over the side and pulled up this nice, fresh water. And they were at the mouth of the Amazon River. They weren't surrounded by the briny salt water at all. Do you know, we can run thinking that pot of gold is out there somewhere, or that thing that's going to take all of our problems away, that it's over here, and we can go from community to community, from city to city, we can go from job to job, we can go from mate to mate. But listen, with a little dream space, you can let down your buckets where you are, because I'm telling you that you have resources right between your own ears that haven't been tapped yet. You say, "Listen, I've thought about my life. I've thought until I've got a headache." Well, what do you want us to do now? Feel sorry for you? Thought about your life till you got a headache? Maybe you've been thinking the wrong way. That maybe we can let down our buckets where we are and at least begin to move forward. Sometimes we feel a little bit like the deep sea diver who is way out there in the middle of the ocean, and he's way down under the water or swimming around, and he gets this urgent message, "Come up quickly, the ship's sinking." Well, I'm not so sure that is all that exciting, at that particular point. But I think we feel that way, that everything tends to have failed us. And so we're not doing much swimming anymore. We're not thinking about that much anymore. Now, let's ask, how can a person deal? First of all, where did I receive my feelings about myself? And secondly, how can I improve those feelings about myself? It is the pervasive message of our culture that a person has value in proportion to their looks and performance. Now let's just examine that for a few moments. Let's take the matter of our looks and just probe that. Now, what's one of the first things a human being does when they arise in the morning? They usually go look in the mirror. That is the worst time in the world to look in the mirror. If you don't like what you see, you start your day in a hole, and you spend the rest of your day trying to dig your way out. And it is a little discouraging. Sometimes you look in the mirror and you have to look around your nose to see yourself. That's not very pleasant. Or there are all kinds of things that can happen to the bone structure of our faces and the different facial characteristics. Strange things can happen to ears. Some of them just never know when to quite stop growing. It's hard to just look into that and like what you see. But suppose you could get up in the morning and remember now, the only self you have is the one that you're wearing right now. You better like that one. If you don't like that one will never change. Only when we accept ourselves, said Carl Rogers, can we then change. And so don't do this business of standing before the mirror and saying, now, just as soon as, don't do that. Just say, hey, you hunk. By the way, I'm liking you. I was doing this little thing on the West Coast in Los Angeles, and a 76-year-old woman came up and she said, "Do you know tonight is the first night I ever heard that I was to like myself?" I always thought, she said, I was supposed to hate myself. That's what I've been doing all these years. But she liked what she heard, and she said, "You know what I'm going to do in the morning? I'm going to get up and I'm going to go and I'm going to look in that mirror and I'm going to say, 'Hey, gal, you're something else.'" They tried to figure out, Sir Isaac Galton in 1883 in England tried to figure out what it was that made a beautiful face and what it was that made an ugly face. And so he took all these drawings and made all these composites and stacked one on the other and the other and the other, and he made a long study of it, and he finally came up with this conclusion: that a beautiful face has normal characteristics, and an ugly face has a few surprises. Now, we all love surprises. And so in the morning, you go look in the mirror and say, "Surprise, surprise." I do have a bit of good news and some bad news tonight. And the bad news is for all you beautiful, handsome creatures out there. And that is, listen, you're not going to hang on to all those beautiful looks. You're going to lose them. That thing's going to wrinkle up and crease, and all sorts of things are going to happen to it, and you may as well get ready. And then I've got good news for all the ugly ones here tonight. You're going to improve with age. You'll improve with age. Self-image, just what that mirror can do to us, what it can do to a child. It's astonishing. Do you know here is a mother that's taking her spite out on her kids and her husband? Why? Is it because the kids are bad? Is it because her husband's bad? Well, partly. Not altogether, though. No, do you know, she just may not like what's happening to her. And so she just takes it out on anybody that gets in trouble. Here's a man who's doing the same thing. He's on this one's case, and he's on that one's case, and he's non-communicative at home, and he's non-communicative with wife, with children, and at work he's uptight. What's the matter with him? Probably no one's done anything to him. I remember dealing with a college student. The college student had this terrible self-image. Was not really beautiful to look at. But out of this terrible self-image, you couldn't imagine the loneliness and the fear and the insecurity and just the hatefulness. Just a hostile human being. Nobody wanted to be with them. The opposite sex wasn't at all interested. There were no friendships. The people in the dormitories wanted to have nothing to do with the person. And you know all that had to change? He just hated himself. And as soon as that changed, his world changed. I tell you, self-esteem, there's hardly anything in the world that is more critical than that. But we're pointing out that this is a culture that sends all the wrong messages. They did an experiment in the school system in which they took a college essay, an English essay, the same essay, reproduced it 100 times, gave it to 100 teachers and professors, accompanied by a different picture. Some of the pictures were of beautiful people, some of the pictures were of very homely to very ugly people. Same essay, and they were asked to grade the essay. All they had, same essay, different pictures. And what do you suppose happened? The homelier, the less beautiful, the grades went down. Is that fair? How would you like to be one of those persons trapped in a body that you didn't say, "Now, Dad, I would like to have a body with ears that are just gigantic"? You didn't ask for that. You didn't ask for your height. You didn't ask for the color of your eyes. You didn't ask for the size of your nose. And yet, here you are being discriminated against, being mistreated. When we accept ourselves as we are, then we can change. We may be then too hard on ourselves. What we need to do is loosen up just a little bit, feel a little bit better about it, take a little longer, give ourselves a little longer time, relax a little bit, and go at that in an entirely different way, and we'll make some real progress there. Looks, what a difference it can make in the way we deal with our own self-esteem.
So That's the first piece of how we feel about ourselves, our appearance. In our next episode, Landon will pick up right there and look at the issue of performance and how much that impacts the way we feel about ourselves. We hope that you've enjoyed today's episode, and we invite you to follow and rate the podcast wherever you get your material. It really helps the algorithms as other people are seeking the same kind of information. This podcast is made possible by Friends of Heartbeat, who always invite you to visit the website thisisheartbeat.com, where you'll find more information about materials that are available through Landon's work. Until next time, this is Heartbeat, the podcast.